We are live here on Plus One EXP's Roll for Content channel. My name is Tony Vicinda. I'm a chief alchemist here at Plus One EXP, which is a weird little brand that multi-classes in tabletop game design, beard and skincare alchemy, and the Bardic College of Content Creation. Our hope and desire is to help amazing players find great designers who love their games, and help amazing designers find great players whose game. I said it all backwards. We want players and designers to find each other. And everybody's beautiful, and we love it. Thank you guys so much for being with us today. One of my favorite things to do to help that happen is to just sit down with the designers of those games and talk to them about the work that they are doing. Today we're sitting down with Austin and Amanda, who are working on Deimos Academy. Austin, why don't you tell people who you are, what you do, and tell us a little bit about your role with Deimos Academy.
Yeah, I'm Austin. My pronouns are he, they, she. I am a game designer, podcaster, therapist, performer, because I hate sleeping. I grew up on Toonami, and Tom taught me sleep is for the weak, and I took it to heart. My role is Deimos. I'm one of the co-designers. The other designers, Banana Chan, who isn't with us today. So yeah, I helped design the game you'll all play. I did a lot of the narrative stuff, making the school feel alive. Help playtest mechanical stuff and whatnot. Did a lot of brainstorming that Banana and Amanda fixed as we went along. So
awesome, sweet. I'm super excited to chat more with you today. Amanda, same questions. Why don't you tell people who you are, what you do, where they can find you online, and tell us about your role with Deimos Academy.
Hi, I'm Amanda Kahl. I am an artist. I'm actually a comic artist, but I also do a bunch of freelance illustration in the tabletop gaming world. So my big online project is my webcomic, Age of Night. But for Deimos Academy, I did all of the artwork, so all of the visual components, and kind of directed the overall, helped discover and direct the whole overall aesthetic of the entire game. But this is a game that uses a lot of visual components, so I also did all of the paper dolls and the maps and all of that kind of stuff. And I was also part of the development team with Austin and Banana, where we would play test and go over stuff and just kind of throw ideas back and forth and figure out how to make the game work better.
Awesome. And we've mentioned a couple of things, and it's in the description of the video. So we've mentioned paper dolls, but what we haven't talked about is what Deimos Academy is. For anybody who doesn't know, Austin, can you tell us a little bit about what Deimos Academy is all about?
Yeah, Deimos Academy is a GM-less horror TTRPG. You and your friends are playing as a group of friends, or you are friends. You may not be friends now. In the game, in real life, hopefully you're all friends, or else I don't know where you're hanging out. Guess we get at a con or something. But anyway, you are taking on the role as alumni, returning to your creepy, haunted boarding school.
Awesome. And it uses a paper doll mechanic. Amanda, you mentioned a lot about looking at some of the different visuals for that. Can you just tell us a little bit about how the paper dolls and other pieces kind of work into the actual system?
Sure. So a lot of the mechanic of the game is that you're basically wandering around this old school where you used to attend, going from room to room and trying to discover suppressed memories and come up with what your history together and individually at this institution was. And so we have a bunch of room maps that are the different rooms of the school, and you use your paper dolls. They're your little avatars. There's a bunch of different options of what those paper dolls can look like, and they do actually pop up into a little tent fold so that you can have them walk around the map and explore different areas. And you can customize them, you can color on them or draw on them to make them your own. And so you have these two different components, the paper dolls that allow you to have your little avatar in the game, and the maps themselves that you are actually coloring in different elements and drawing on and interacting with as you are exploring this school and uncovering these memories and developing this past.
I love it. I am So here for all that. I love this very different take on some of the mechanic pieces. I can't wait to dive into it a little bit more. But before we do that, I would just love to hear kind of from each of y'all. And I know this can seem like such a like it's the question everybody asks, but I love hearing how people got sort of just playing games. Like what got you into RPGs in the first place? Austin, you mentioned right beforehand that you are a gamer. Tell us a little bit about kind of what got you into RPGs specifically in the first place.
RPG specifically, like tabletop, not like video game RPG.
Yeah. Which if video game RPGs were the honor, that's a totally valid answer.
No, I mean, I'd always had interest in playing TTRPGs, specifically like Dungeons and Dragons, because I feel like we're like when you're on the outside, that's kind of all you know exists. I knew that existed. I knew Pathfinder existed, and people were like, Pathfinder's like harder D&D, and I was like, okay, well, not the harder one first for sure. And so it was like I had friends who'd been playing for a long time, but by the time I met them, they like had their group for a while, but they played like a Pokemon RPG they like made themselves. They had a lot of really cool stuff they do, and so eventually they started a new campaign that was when 5th edition like had just started when I was coming out of undergrad before grad school, and I had no time again. And yeah, I just was always interested. I like playing make believe. I like dragons and elves and magic. I guess really thinking about it, I've never really thought about it. It's probably because I read the Inheritance series. Because I always thought that was really cool, and I still think it could be cool. Christopher Poloni, if you're watching, I'll make a game for your world because it's a really cool world. It'd be a really cool game. Just saying.
Make it happen.
Just reach out, Chris.
Name magic, true names. Like it's a really interesting idea of like the magic is just like asking stuff to do it. So yeah, it's probably because I read the Inheritance series. That was my like fantasy book series growing up. Those books.
Love it. Awesome. Amanda, how about you? What got you kind of initially into RPGs, just playing?
So, I mean, I always was kind of like a nerdy kid, and in high school, all of my friends were also nerds, and we kind of like skirted around the edges of ever actually playing. Like, we did that thing where we would all make characters and never get the campaign off the ground, and we did that several times. We'd play like half a session, and I was always like, this seems really cool, why can't this ever go anywhere? And so when I got to college, I joined the gaming club, and I was like, this is gonna be my thing. I'm gonna do this as my like one social activity, because I also like worked my way through school, so I did not have a lot of free time. And I was like, this is gonna be my one social activity. This is my social life while I'm in school, is the gaming club. And I just jumped right into the deep end of the mega gaming nerd life from there. And by my sophomore year in college, I was the president of the gaming club. So
Awesome. I love that. I would also love to hear, like, at what point were you like, hey, I want to not just play games or homebrew or design around the table. At what point did you think, hey, I want to start trying to do development and art and other pieces for game? Amanda, what kind of led you into the design space?
it was actually a pretty seamless transition from that same experience, because the school I went to was an art school, and so we actually had a game design major, and so a lot of my friends from the gaming club were game design majors, so they were creating games all the time. Sometimes they'd be doing it for class, sometimes they'd be doing it for themselves, and they'd be bringing them to the club to play test. And so I kind of got to be a part of play testing and offering feedback right from the very beginning of being into the gaming hobby anyway. And then by the time I graduated, so many of my contacts were from that same, like so many of my friends and contacts were from that same group of people that then went on to make games professionally or otherwise be involved in tabletop creation in some capacity. And so that's where I got some of my first illustration jobs after I graduated. And it just kind of like seamlessly went from like not just playing games, but also making games were part of the same hobby for me the whole time.
That's awesome. I love that. Austin, how about you? What got you, what would you ever from just playing into that design space?
So I had interest in working in games because I did a lot of homebrew stuff and et cetera, et cetera. And my friend Adam Bass, who is World Championship Gaming Company, we both are in the same area. I hang out with Adam all the time. I helped organize, or used to, before I got too busy, used to help organize Grand Prix Zine Fest, where Adam would like sell some of their zine games and stuff. And when they were working on Cobwebs, and they knew I had interest, I helped make their Kickstarter video for it. I like sent in some of the like audio stuff. And they're like, hey, do you want to do a quick start? And I was like, yes, I've been wanting to write for a game for so long. Thank you for trusting me. I've literally never done it. How do I do it? So I got to write a quick start for Cobwebs. Then I wrote, I made the Planet Ritual for Necronautilus, the next game that he sent out. So that's kind of like what propelled it. That's how I met Banana, because Banana was on Cobwebs. I was like on Twitter, like I want to do more game stuff, and then Banana literally slid into my DMs and was like, "The project I'm talking to you about now, like pitch that, like, do you want to work on this?"
I love that.
So,
yeah. Adam's such a gem, such an intellectual person. I love anytime we get a chance to do stuff with Adam, and I love hearing that touchstone also too. And Cobwebs is just such a gorgeous game and such an amazing
really
piece of design.
Every game Adam puts out is like impeccably beautiful.
Yeah, this is now a World Champ Game Co. Stan episode.
Yeah, I 100%. I hope Adam knows. Every time people ask, I'm like, everything I do is because Adam makes games, so you should probably play Adam's games, honestly, if you want to know why I do what I do. So
I'm a World Champ Game Co. patron, and we just got his Rose Petal game, which is gorgeous and beautiful and amazing. And I need to order some roses so that I can actually play it. Like, it is. Yeah, he does just tremendous design work. So that's great. We're also going to talk, in addition to talking about Adam's games, to talk about Deimos Academy. It's Zine Month right now. So Zine Month, for anybody who doesn't know, is a grassroots effort to kind of decentralize crowdfunding for zine weight projects, which are books about this big, usually staple bound, half page folded over. They can be color, they can be black and white, they can be Xerox, they can be printed through an offset printer, or digitally printed, any number of ways. But they're very small magazines that kind of have different content in them, usually independently produced. And there was historically an event called Zine Quest that happened on Kickstarter that's been moved to August, but happened 3 weeks before it was supposed to. That move did. And so in February, people have moved that to being Zine Month, and we are big supporters of decentralizing and moving away from Kickstarter as the only platform for funding. We think artists should make intentional choices about where and how they're funding based on the type of project they're running. And so some of these are Kickstarter projects, some of these aren't, but I'm very excited to talk about the ones y'all sent. Anybody can head over to zinemonth.com to see all of the 100+ projects that are now. But I asked you guys to pick a couple that you were excited about for us to talk about. Let's chat through those real quick. Let's talk about, first up, It's Lunchtime. Amanda, this is one of your submissions. Tell us a little bit about what caught your eye for It's Lunchtime.
It's lunchtime! So this is a game wherein you play a hungry seagull that lives near a popular wharfside market. You're just a seagull trying to get some food. I like this because this is part of what I enjoy about like micro RPGs, is that it's like, what if I just want to do some nonsense?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, yeah, sure, make a small game about some nonsense where you're a hungry bird.
Yeah.
Okay, I love that. I love very simple, kind of absurd ideas like that. It's one of my favorite things. So this made me excited because also seagull just wants a French fry. Can relate.
Yeah, we lived in Seattle for a decade, and so we used to go down to the Ivers that was on the water, and you'd go outside and you would try to not get attacked by the seagulls while you were eating your food, and then feed the seagulls whatever was left of your food whenever you were done. And so it was absolutely. I've lived the other side of this experience. Now I can be seagull.
Now you can be the seagull.
Austin, you wanted to talk about the Banshee of Belfort, a Duck Quest RPG adventure zine. What caught your idea? What caught your attention about the Banshee of Bilford?
I like DuckTales.
It's a great answer. I'm a sucker for anything that's DuckTales related. I can't believe I haven't backed this one yet. Darcy and I have talked a little bit, the creator for this one, about the project. There is a good friend of ours from Gym Room Games did a Merkborg hack called Duckborg last year that we got to play on stream, and it's I want to play Banshee of Bilford using Duckborg specifically, but it's got its own little system in there also too. Any other things about the game that stood out to you?
Yeah, I mean, it does seem like a really interesting idea. I enjoy that it has its own setting and its own adventure, and it's part of Duck Quest, but that you can put it into anything really, which I always think is fun. I think it's a nice design thing if you like make something that's meant to build upon something greater in the community, but if people want to take it into any other setting, right, of like they say any other classic RPG setting, like you can easily like port it into whatever you want.
Yeah.
I like things I can buy that I'm from the Midwest, so if I can get a deal, if I can buy one thing and use it as 10 things, incredible.
Yeah. My favorite thing about this is actually, and I'm not a gear person. Like I'm not like I'm a theater of the mind individual. I'll like draw some loose maps on a piece of plexiglass over some hexes. Like I don't get super granular, but I do want these miniatures. The
miniatures are very cool.
They're very cool. And so, yeah, the art on this is gorgeous. It's a really cool concept. I love the amount of DuckTales and duck-related content that we see coming out. And yeah, I do think the ability to drop this into another setting or just play it as a standalone is huge. And so,
yeah, I saw it and I was like, oh, I could just make it the DuckTales family instead. Perfect.
Yep. So I want to talk a little bit about Trail with No Name, which is system agnostic. It's by Alex Coogan, who's part of Feral Indie Studio. And for whatever reason, I'm not following over on itch. It's a sandbox piece. So it's system and setting agnostic. But Alex is also one of the organizers of Zine Month. So Feral Indie Studios did a lot of the work to get the site up and running and all that stuff. And so in addition to that, they also each put out a game. They had 3 games that came out over the course of the month, which is just amazing. So Trail with No Names, I'm very excited about, but it's basically a little toolkit for you to be able to talk about what life on the trail is like. And I'm like a sucker for travelogue games, like anything that's about the space of moving from point A to point B, because either I'm going to go from the town to the dungeon, nothing, or I'm going to have a toolkit that I'm going to use. I don't want to do like, you wake up, we do a random roll. Oh, okay, that's it. That's what happens today. Like there's no real functional choice that happens then. I like things like this that let me build in other pieces, and there's a few of them. There's like Walking Tale that's happening right now, and a few other games that are up like this. But I really like this also because I feel like there's very strong Western vibes without anything that makes me worry about the fact that this has very strong Western vibes, if that makes sense.
Right. Yes.
Does anything stand out at either of y'all about Trail with No Names? Some of the art here.
I mean, I like Westerns, but I've never enjoyed playing a Western thing.
I'm with you on that.
So maybe this will be the thing that feels good.
Right.
It's maybe it's this one. I'm like looking like, I don't know, like, you know, like desert theme and long coats and, you know, you and your like, it's not, I don't know the word for an adventuring party of like cowboys, but
a posse. I don't know.
Posse,
yeah,
like,
be a
I don't know,
posse.
like silhouetted on like the sun, like that all sounds really dope. But I've never had something get the feel right.
Yeah,
Right.
it's a difficult experience to translate.
Yeah.
I like this making camp section that, I mean, there's just a couple of pages that are previewed here, but I do really enjoy on this one that is previewed here how it's like you have different options of like what you can do.
Mm.
Like whether you're going to recover from the day or whether you're going to try to make preparations to make things easier, but you have to make those kinds of choices and the way that they'll affect things going on in the future, instead of it's just like always assumed when you travel in a lot of games that like, well, whatever you're doing while you're traveling, you must be making the optimum choice because traveling had no effect on you.
Right. And that's why I'm like, either just go to the place you're going to go, or like, I don't want to do just a random roll or whatever. I either want there to be player facing choices. Do you do these things or not? I think that's that piece specifically I really liked.
Yeah.
I also like the companions, right? Because like, I think this goes to your point, Austin, like, a lot of like the companions you can have are not limited to just like, hey, it's horses, or here are 3 types of horses. There's like aurochs, camels, dire goose, griffins, saddle boar. And so like there's these other types of companions that can be on the trail with you that I think make it feel like I said, even though the art has that vibes, I think this is really good to drop in anywhere. And for me, like a big part of what does make a Western enjoyable is the isolation, right? And I think oftentimes we tend to, in a lot of other games, like fill up the space with a lot of things as opposed to letting that sit. And a party can oftentimes feel like a lot, even just in and of itself. And so how you create that sense of isolation and how you look at, I think specifically the relationship between the PC and their animal companion does help draw out some of those pieces potentially a little bit better too. So it's like, I just think Alex does such amazing art. The whole team over at Fairlandia has done such a great job, and they always do, but their sandboxy toolkit stuff is stuff that I always enjoy and that always catches my eyes. So I hadn't given this one a shout out yet, so I wanted to make sure I did. We've also got Tending by you, Amanda. Tell us a little bit about what caught your eye about Tending. We talked about Tending a lot. Tending was one of my top 10 most anticipated games of Zine Month.
It looks so good. So like I really, it happens to hit an intersection of a bunch of my interests, and you have like the interest of, so in case people haven't heard, it's a mixed media journaling game where you take the role of a devotee at a holy site. Over the span of seasons, you'll carry out sacred work, seek the divine, and change everything in the process. So I really love this because it's like an intersection of a lot of my interests, where it's about religion, and it's about nature, and it's about the impact of humans on the land and anthropology, and all of that is so my jam. And it looks gorgeous. So
yeah,
there's nothing that I don't love about this entire thing.
It ticks off a ton of things for me. And like I mentioned earlier, like there's a 12-pound level that you get a box full of custom ephemera sent to you too.
Like here, have a bunch of items to seed your game, and that's so cool.
I love that piece. And we talked about this one yesterday. It was one of my favorite ones, but I'd love to talk about it again. Austin, you had I Have the High Ground by Jess as one of yours. Tell us a little bit about what caught your eye about I Have the High Ground.
I am a sucker for covers and titles, and they got me. I was like, oh, Star Wars, and I clicked it.
Yeah.
Excuse me, sorry. But I don't know, I enjoy... So before I worked on Deimos, actually, I was not a big fan of GM-less games. I found it to be like very... It's like a weird space to get into when you've only ever played games with like a GM or DM or a storyteller or someone who's kind of like keeping everyone happy and like steering the ship, so to speak, or whatever. Because I was like, well, if you have a GM-less game, then like someone's gonna end up doing it. Like someone's just gonna end up being the GM anyway.
Right.
But this interesting that it's a GM-less game, and it's a GM-less like PvP game. Like it's you and another person, and you're like you're dueling. You're like it's like you're sword fighting. They use like fencing terms for it. So it's an interesting idea of just like you make a character and then you two duel, and you are like exploring these characters like strengths and weaknesses and flaws. Specifically the loser of the duel is the one who lashes out and like causes the duel to end. The person who wins gets like the last word, quote unquote. So I don't know, I think that's really cool. I really enjoy PvP stuff, and it's nice that it's an RPG made specifically for that, because PvP in other games where like it's not made for that can feel bad if you're like playing Pathfinder or whatever and you like, I want to attack my party member. It's like, okay, well, this is a little like, this feels bad because you're meant to all just like be adventuring together or something.
Yeah.
So I enjoy that like they made it and like, this is specifically you and someone else plays and you're fighting for some reason, be it a sparring match, be it like you're at odds for whatever reason, but you're fighting. And they have some stuff in there about like setting it up and the storytelling, but I just think that's really cool.
Yeah, there's a company called Slugfest Games that may still be around, that put out a ton of like dueling and fighting games at one point in time that I loved. We played the heck out of them, but the thing I love about this is the fact that is the narrative components. Like my favorite scene in Princess Bride is 100% the dueling scene where they're talking back and forth and exploring and like their first encounter with each other as characters, which juxtaposition to like I have the high ground for like Star Wars, where it's like this is the final encounter, one of the final encounters we're going to see between these characters, and what is it like for them to be processing with each other, like that space for narrative exploration while fighting. It's such a fun thing to do, and 2-player games have become very much my jam. Like Jeff Stormer gets to play them all the time, and I've gotten to play a number of them recently on stream, and it's one of my favorite things to do. So I'm very excited about this one as well. The last one I just want to mention real quick, just for people who maybe haven't checked it out yet, is 13 Hunters. This is 100% a shill. I am the marketer and promoter for this project. And so all month long, you're going to hear about it. This is our Zemo project. When we say our, I mean Nuclear Obelisk has done a phenomenal job of creating 13 system and setting agnostic bounty hunters. We played with them in a hard sci-fi setting through the Void the other day. They would drop easily into a fantasy setting as well. The information layout and the art is all beautiful. It's all done by Nuclear. So I'm just the shill. Sam Sorensen is going to be editing, but Knobs did all the art and the words. But their information design is one of the things that always stands out to me as just absolutely amazing in what they do. So it's basically one page of full art and then a dossier on that bounty hunter. It flips up. So it's like landscape bound, but then move vertically. So it's actually like you're flipping through a set of dossiers on it. And so, but the way that they did the dial, the little pieces of information design that they worked in, every single dossier has a couple of common elements, but it's overwhelmingly different and looks different. And so I would love anybody who's interested in this, even if it's not something that you think would fit into one of your games, I would encourage people to go check it out. It's also the only project on GameFound for Zine Month. So if you're able to help share that, that would be great, because there's not a built-in ecosystem that really helps support things like Kickstarter or even Itch for that matter over on GameFound yet. We're working a lot with the team there to help increase the presence of TTRPGs over on GameFound to make it a more viable platform. And helping fund this project will help do that also too. So go check it out. Great project. We've got about 9 days left in the project and a good bit of distance to go before the end. So love any support people can offer on that. But with that said, y'all didn't come here to hear about those games. Maybe you did. But you came here to hear about Deimos Academy. And so let's talk a little bit more about this game. I have been excited about this game since I first heard about it. I'm a huge fan of Banana and their work. I love the team, even though I hadn't met either of y'all at that point in time. But I love the concept. Like I am not someone who played with paper dolls as a child. Nobody in my house was. I don't know if either of y'all were. I would love to know that. But I think the first thing I want to know is, before we dive into some of the specific mechanics, you talked a little bit earlier about like coloring on, drawing, and kind of creating your character by drawing out the paper doll. If you're creating the high school version of yourself, what's the one thing you're coloring in or drawing on the paper doll version of you? That's what I got to know first and foremost. So let's start with you, Amanda. What is the thing that's absolutely going to end up on the paper doll version of your high school self?
Oh, geez. Well, to be clear, the paper dolls in the game are your like present self as adults. But a high school me, I had this like really nasty green hoodie that I never washed, and every day wore it every day. That would be on the Amanda paper doll.
Awesome. Let's do the current version of you. What does the current version of you also always have on?
The current version of me, it's still probably going to be pretty similar, except this time it would be some sort of black cardigan that I actually do wash. I have several of them now.
We call that growth.
And I wash them.
There we go. But also, if you didn't, it's darker color, so people would notice less. So it's best of both worlds.
That's why I have a black cat, so you can't tell when I'm covered in cat hair.
That's a pro strat right there.
I only ever wear black. So
awesome. Austin, how about you? What is the paper doll high school version of Austin always have drawn on them? And then what about modern Austin?
High school Austin? Some manga. I don't like.
It's just a book that says manga on the top.
Yeah, it just says manga. It's like whatever I grabbed at the library. It seemed like I thought I was cool. I did read manga, but it was 100% like, look, I'm so cool. I read manga and I sit like L from Death Note. It was not cool. Do not sit like L from Death Note. That is terrible on your knees. You do not stand in chairs. They were right to tell me I was being weird. You don't stand in chairs. Currently, it's probably a pen. I like have pens I buy specifically to have in my pocket to take out and fiddle. I rarely use them to actually write. I'll like be at a restaurant and they're like, well, before I be at a restaurant, like, oh, you have a pen, like before to give tip. I'm like, oh no, I'll take yours. That's like a safety blanket. I don't know why I picked up that habit, but I just did. When my partner gives me like, because I'll give her my pin to use if she needs it, and if she gives me like a different pin back, I can tell. It's like a whole thing. I have my special pocket pins that stay in my special pocket.
That's awesome. I love it. So tell me a little bit more about this. So let's talk just a little bit briefly about the paper dolls themselves. So they're part of the character creation process. What does that look like, Amanda?
So the character creation process overall, we have a handful of templates, and you basically just pick one of the templates and you fill out a series of like ad lib prompts where you fill out what is your character's name and age and where are they from, and also like what was like the thing they were known for in high school versus like what is their personality like now. And the paper dolls are kind of similar where you have currently we have 9 different options for paper dolls that are created, but they're just basic outlines. Like you have illustrations, but they're just line drawings, and so you have a lot of freedom to color them in however you like, add things, like draw things onto them to customize them a little bit more fully and bring them in line with also whatever you wrote in your kind of template for the character creation sheet.
Awesome. Sweet. I like I said, it's one of the things that I caught immediately. I also love, and this is kind of what I want to explore a little bit more. I didn't. Did either of y'all play with paper dolls as a child? Was that a thing that for either of y'all that was a thing? Yes,
I did.
No video games. Yes, paper dolls. Tell me about your experiences with paper dolls as a child. I think we had a set of like magnetic clothes changing dolls, which I think were as close as we got, and absolutely made their rotation and imagination games that we played as kids. But paper dolls were not. Tell me a little bit about the paper dolls you played with as a kid.
I always liked the really high end, like historical paper dolls. So it was like this series of like, I forget who published them, but it was this series of very lavish paper dolls that were made to show historic fashion. So it would be like from, the Gilded Age or the Victorian era or whatever. And you would have like these paper dolls with these really beautiful like illustrations of these like huge elaborate outfits, and they were very intricate and very fiddly to cut out, and I really just like primarily liked them because I liked to study the way they were put together and the kind of like tricks of how they had this one basic form, and then depending on what they overlaid on top of it, they could make it look like they had their hands in different positions or their hair was different or any of this other stuff. And I was like, how are you doing that? Like I was just fascinated by the craft side of it.
Yeah.
And similarly in that same product line, they had like a historic homes line where it was paper crafting of little like dollhouse type elements. And so it actually taught me a lot about just like paper crafting and construction and how you can take something flat and through a strategic cuts and folds, make it something three-dimensional, as well as just being really neat and very richly illustrated environments.
Well, and even with that, like the vibe of the paper dolls that you liked had this kind of historical quality. I think a lot of times paper dolls suggest even a nostalgia that we didn't necessarily even have, right? Like a nostalgia that if you didn't play with them, you're like, this is a toy that is something that is from further back than when I was growing up, and that may be why I didn't engage with them, because it used to be a fairly common form of toy, and it became less and less common. So I do think there's a level immediately at which even the format of the game triggers this level of like looking back and thinking back and nostalgia, which I love. Austin, tell us a little bit. You said you're working a lot on the narrative components. Tell us a little bit about the story premise for Deimos Academy.
Yeah, so like I said, you are a group of alumni who are returning to your boarding school. The premise is that when you're at the boarding school as a student, a few important things happen. One, you and all your friends gained supernatural powers. So like think like not necessarily X-Men powers, but like telepathy, astral projection, being able to see ghosts, that kind of stuff. Like not like, ooh, Charles Xavier telepathy, like, oh, it's loud all the time telepathy. The other thing is that when you gain those powers, something traumatic happens. Something that like, it's, we have a fear thing where it's like something you're afraid of then that's probably tied to like when you found out you have powers and something you're afraid of now. And so he is like, why would you go back to this school? And we have like an ad lib for that you know the other players make, because making the school is kind of like the extra player at the table.
Yeah.
Like if there was like a GM, the GM would make the school or whatever. So you like fill in like what the school is known for, the year you graduated, because it's the 10 or 15 year reunion.
15.
Something.
Yeah.
You fill in like why you were friends, if you're still friends. There's a whole relationship chart for like who don't you like anymore, who do you never talk to, who haven't you seen since graduation. So like it's not you showing up with like your best friends currently, it's you showing up and oh, that guy you haven't seen since graduation's here who the day of like tried to steal your car or whatever. And your bond is that you all know you have these powers and you were close at some point, but maybe you're only close because you all figured out you had these weird powers, and this school is definitely haunted.
And there is definitely something weird happening
here.
Yeah,
it's definitely like the school is meant to be weird. I made like a timeline for the school where it's like been burned down and getting rebuilt in like a year. It's like the oldest school in existence. Very much meant to be like, this school is fueled by something. Maybe it got built on something. Maybe it's something running it. Who knows and why it happened? But it's like meant to be creepy and unknowable. Something is going on at this school.
Right. And yeah, and like I said, I love a lot of the presented vibes of this, both through the art, through the premise of it, like I said, through even the material components that you're actually using to explore this space. But it is that process of exploration that is a lot of what this navigates around. It's going back through and having started with, yes, there's this school is creepy, this school is haunted, that you got your powers here. And now let's walk around and reminisce about what happened, as well as exploring where it's at now. What is, and I know a couple of the mechanics as far as moving through the rooms, triggering colors. What does that look like in play? What's the way that we kind of invite as a table that we are invited into exploring that process?
Yeah, so you come in, so you start, you explore, when you go into a room, each player picks an item, like Amanda's drawn the rooms, and then the rooms there are items she's drawn. You pick an item to go to, and you try to, I forget the word for it. There's a word for like being able to psychically pull memories from items.
Mm-hmm.
Is that psychometry? Is the word?
It is psychometry.
There you go.
I'm glad
So
that you came up with that, Tony, because I was never gonna think of that word.
Okay,
Yeah,
look,
I was gonna say,
It's never gonna
you know,
happen.
in that Star Wars game that came out where you could like force field, it's like that.
You know, I know that word because I started playing RPGs by playing GURPS, and there's 1,000,001 abilities in GURPS, and psychometry is 100% one of them. And so,
so you do some psychometry to try and like recall a memory that you have in this room with this thing for whatever reason, or if it reminds you of something. You roll some dice. You can succeed, make success, or fail on a D6 system. And then you have a pool of memories you pull from, depending on how you succeed. And if you want to, you can choose to act out a scene and tell people, or to rip up the memory and throw it away forever and never talk about it ever again.
oh, interesting.
And that pool of memories is something that the players also create at the beginning of the game, like before you actually get into the school. One of the things that you do in the setup phase is that everybody writes one good memory, one bad memory, and one scary/traumatic memory, and those all get shuffled together. So when you then you're drawing these memories, and then it's not necessarily one that you wrote. It could be anybody's that you're picking up, and you don't know whether you're going to draw a good one, a bad one, or something scary and traumatic.
Oh, I love that. No, and like I said, I love the one of the things I love that the gaming creator does, and one of the things I love that y'all are exploring in this space is this kind of is taking materials that are not the normal things that we use when we use games, and then using that to explore a situation of play in a very unique way. So, you know, the paper dolls, the shuffling together this deck of memories, the rooms themselves, and the coloring aspect on those pieces are all like very unique elements and materials that come into a game. And one of the things that I think about more and more lately, and that Jay Dragon really brought to my attention when talking about Yazeba's one night, was narrative and art really as part of a major part of the system of games, right? Like not hard mechanics. This is a D20 system, or like here's the points that you have that you can burn to do these abilities, but things about art and things about prose that actually create the system of play. And it sounds a lot more like that, and then the actual narrative process at the table is really what drives Deimos Academy. Not, hey, here's the mechanics that you're going to trigger, though there are certain mechanics. They're all lens towards narrative. And so I think a question for either of you based on your lens, and maybe we'll go to Amanda first, is as you were approaching the art for this, and then for you, it'll be about the writing and the narrative side. As you were approaching the art to this, Amanda, like what were some of the considerations that you took in to try to help drive the process of the game and the narrative components of the game through the art? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So on like the practical side of it, there's a lot of like making sure that things actually just work and are clear. So like you have to make sure when you draw an environment that the items that you are meant to interact with are clearly delineated as items you are meant to interact with versus just, you know, the background. There was the aesthetic side of it of we wanted things to look like a coloring book. So everything had to be clear line, no rendering, no heavy shadows or anything like that. Everything just had to be clear outlines so that you had this really open canvas where you felt like it was okay to and expected to interact with it and to draw in it and color it and make that a part of the process. So keeping that kind of clear line coloring book style is really what like invites the players to feel like it's okay. You're not like, oh no, I'm not supposed to scribble in this book. I'm not supposed to write on my game components. It's like, no, this is what this is made for. And so having that design lends itself to inviting the players in to do that. And then also from an aesthetic standpoint, like we went back and forth for a while and threw a bunch of different ideas around, and I went through a whole bunch of different iterations of what the dolls should look like, because we were trying to find a good balance between like, how does this represent a character that the player can feel connected to, and what still gives this kind of evocative feel of like the creepy factor, because it's very easy, like when we're just talking about it, for it to be like, I don't get how this is a horror game. And because we're just talking about like, yeah, you wander around with paper dolls and you do memories and stuff. And it's like, yeah, but the art has to also help to get forward that idea, like get across that idea of no, there is something kind of disquieting and unsettled here. And, you know, I don't want anything to be explicit because we want it to be very open as far as how the players decide, like, what exactly is the nature of the bad thing that is happening at this school and has happened at this school. None of that is really set in stone. That's something the players come up with on their own. But I definitely still wanted to get across that mood of like something is creepy, something is not entirely right. And so we ultimately ended up with these relatively realistic characters for the paper dolls, but they all have this kind of blank melancholic expression to their faces where it's like they don't look like they're like it's on the sad side of neutral. Like they don't look tortured, but they certainly don't look happy. They look like something is on their mind.
I love that, and it seems like it is interesting. Like that, so I've been putting some of the different rooms up next to us, and we have the some of the doll samples kind of around us on the screen. But the which items just to pick up is very clear, because even as I was looking at it, I was like, before you even said that, I was like, oh, obviously I'm supposed to pick up and mess with either it was the chapel scene, like the thurible, or this person was here, or what looks like might be a bag of something in the back, or a flask up front. Not go over and be like, this piano is what I remember, right?
Right.
And because the piano is part of the set and the setting, and so they're highlighted really well. But it does also seem like really challenging, because a lot of what we would typically associate as horror art is dark and heavy and filled with shadow, and these are big, broad, white pages with line work on them, and that's such a tremendous thing to have to work in. But also, like, some of the pieces are like the scratched out was here, which may be for narrative flexibility, but also has kind of a dark evocation to a name scratched out, right? Or the doll in the music room with it's missing some body parts.
People latch onto that doll.
That doll is the creepiest thing in all of them so far.
I don't want to go on a huge tangent, but I will say very briefly the inspiration for that doll. I was just given like a list for each room of like, these are the items in the room, and so one of the items for the music room was a creepy figurine. I think it was just like a figurine, like a broken figurine. And I was like, I have a great idea for that. So there's these dolls you might have seen on the internet as like a thing. Sorry, this is kind of a tangent.
No, go.
But they're these little porcelain dolls, like porcelain female doll figures. And they're usually missing limbs, and they're white, and they're called frozen charlottes. And it's from this like famous ceramics manufacturer in Germany, like pre-war Germany. I'm pretty sure they didn't exist after World War II, but they made like tons and tons of these. And so there were all of the like seconds ended up just kind of getting thrown out, and you can just find them in the ground all over Germany in different small villages where the factories used to be. And one of those factories was in the town that my family is from. And my great grandfather was a sculptor at one of those factories. And so I found one of these like at like a comic convention. Someone who was selling curiosities was selling them. And I didn't know this. I didn't know anything about this, but I was reading the description, and it said these particular frozen charlottes are from the village of Scheibe Alsbach. And I'm like, that's where my family's from.
Wow.
And so I bought one and posted about it. And then my cousin, who still lives in Germany, is like, yeah, our great-great-grandfather used to be a sculptor at that factory. I find these things all the time when I'm gardening.
Man, you have creepy doll.
Horrifying.
Yeah. And
I cannot describe
when I bought
horror.
it, people are like, that's how you end up cursed. Like, why do you have that?
This feels like the intro to how this game eventually, like, it is through Amanda's bloodline that this game eventually unleashes all the frozen charlottes back upon the world. Like, this is a generation upon generations curse.
I can't explain the horror I would have of, because I could love to garden, of like digging a hole for like my sunflowers or something, and a doll staring at me. I would just cover and be like, yeah, I need to move. Absolutely not.
I don't need to live here anymore.
I found a doll buried out back, so we're moving. And
then a week later, you'd be like, all right, somebody else got rid of that doll. I'm going to go back out and garden again. And then you'd find another one, and you'd be like, no, I'm gonna burn it down now. Like this is
Yeah.
this is
Absolutely not. Oh, did you move it? No, I didn't move it. What are you talking about? No, it's there for a reason.
So, I love it. Austin, same question. So narratively, as you're writing, what are maybe some of the anchors that you're using to help kind of create the structures that are necessary for the narrative to flow?
So I admittedly am actually scared very easily. I do not watch horror movies. I don't watch scary TV shows. I don't mess with any of that. I don't mess with dolls buried in my backyard. Not for me. So I just tried to think of the scariest things I have watched that like when I think about them, I'm like, okay, now I need to go watch like Barney for 4 hours to purge that out of my brain. So that's really like, excuse me, what I went off of. I don't know. I found that I enjoy making scary stuff. I don't enjoy consuming scary stuff, if that makes sense. Like, it was a lot of fun to make it. I really love playing it. Everyone's like, when we play it with Austin, it's 10 times creepier.
And every time we play this game, Austin is always the one who turns the creepy factor up to 11.
Is that because
they always come out with this like, oh yeah, we were doing something mildly creepy, but here's the creepiest thing you've ever heard. Thanks for that.
I love that. So Austin, is that a form of like not like, I think, very appropriate control for you? Like, if I'm the one putting the creepy out there, it came out of me and I don't have to worry about it because I know where it came from?
I think so. I don't know. I have like things I really latch onto. Like, I really latched onto the sea of like the school being like massive and unknowable, kind of like how schooling institutions are in the real world, especially for me, especially someone who went to graduate school. Like, school institutions are like large, unknowable, and seemingly around forever. Like, schools are like, we're celebrating our 800 anniversary, and you're like, 800 years? You've been at school for 800? That doesn't even make sense. What were you teaching 800 years ago where you were at school? So I just took that in. Like, what if it went even further? What if the school's like, we've been around for 2,000 years, and you're like, you've been around since the calendar started? Question mark. Because it's I don't know. I think there's a lot of creepy factor in the real world, in a lot of these institutions, and a lot of real boarding schools that like, they're already boarding schools like this that are like, we've been around for 600 years and we make the best students, and you're like, okay, that sounds like a cult.
Yeah. My favorite thing to do as a child, my mom was a teacher. I spent a lot of time around churches also too. Some of those churches had schools, some of them don't, but they all had old, weird parts of the building you could get into that no one was intended to, and things had just been dumped for years upon years. And schools, the same thing. Like, they all end up with these weird old like artifact rooms, and just digging through those spaces was a huge part of my childhood. I watched Never Ending Story for the first time during a rainstorm in a school, which was a great level of meta to be stuck in while my mom was doing work in like another part of the building. And I was terrified at one point and running through the hallways trying to find my mom. And that's just a real ass memory.
It reminds me, because I went to a private Catholic school growing from like K through 8, and our school is 1,000,000% haunted. That school was haunted. I remember I stayed late one day because I was on the scientific Olympic team, and me and my friend were like cleaning up we were like making a robot. We were like cleaning up all the stuff, and in the art room we hear what sounds like the entire room being like turned upside down and thrown around, and we're like, that's weird. For some reason we go down there to see what's going on. And we go down there, and it looks like the room's been turned upside down. Like, all the tables are upside down, the desk, the teacher's desk.
No.
And we saw that, and we were like, nope, and we left.
Yeah. And so
we went back to his house. We called our after-school teacher, like, hey, we didn't finish cleaning up. We're really sorry. We'll clean up in the morning. We were like, absolutely not.
I love it.
Now I just imagine the art teacher coming in the morning like, again.
Yeah, this damn ghost.
Freaking poltergeist. Now I gotta turn all these tables back over.
Like, the teachers talked about it was haunted. There was old tunnels under the school or something, apparently. They're like, there are old tunnels under the school. Like, if a tornado hits, that's where we're going. And I was like, that's where you're going. I will not be going into the abandoned tunnel under the school.
I'll be tornadoed. Thank you very much.
I will fight the tornado.
Yeah. No, I love it. Which actually, that's great, because it's a great segue into the last question I wanted to ask, which was, for each of y'all, what is the creepy place at a school you went to that if you were going back and visiting, your paper doll version of yourself was going back and visiting, that you would go back in to have a memory, scary, pleasant, or otherwise? What's the space in the school spaces that you occupied that kind of reverberate with what the Deimos Academy experience is?
Yeah, mine is the art room and also the young boys' bathroom that we had at the time. I don't know what I'm sure this school was pretty progressive. I'm sure they've updated it now to be something else, but there was just the boys' bathroom. But I multiple times remember being in there alone and like a faucet turning on next to me, and just like it got to the point where we just ignored it. We'd like wash our hands and then turn and be like, "Listen, man, I'm just washing my hands too. I hope you have a good day. I'll see you later."
Please leave me alone, creepy ghost.
Yeah, absolutely not.
Awesome. Amanda, how about you? Any wonderful or horrible places from your school days that stand out?
So actually the creepy school days would be more in college, where I went to the Savannah College of Art and Design, and so it's an urban campus, and a lot of the different buildings for the school are actually historic buildings that the school purchased and like revamped. And so my major building, they don't use it anymore. They moved my major to a different building now
because of all the deaths. Well, actually it had been a women's home, and so that was like where widowed or mentally ill women would be placed in the city of Savannah at some point. And so that building was incredibly creepy. Some of the buildings around campus were open 24 hours. That one was not open 24 hours. And if you had a late evening class, by the time class was wrapping up, you definitely had that feeling of, I think I just need to leave. I think I need to not be here anymore. I think now is a good time to go. And it just had like the really long, poorly lit industrial type hallways, institutional type hallways, where it was just like, it's a long dark hallway with a bunch of doors on either side. And I know this building is full of people, but it always feels empty. It's very weird. Great. That's great answers. Yeah. I'm glad you all have cursed experiences at school. That's great rules to drop out. I'm super excited about it. I want to encourage anybody who hasn't yet, go over, hit follow on the campaign. You can go to ttrpg.link /deimosks. It'll take you right there, or just go over and look on Kickstarter. We are going to be playing, by which I mean me, if Austin or Amanda, if either of y'all want to come back, but I think Amanda's going to come run it for us on the 10th of next month, so come back on over for that if you want to actually see the game in action. I'm very excited to get a chance to play it.
Since it's GM-less, I'm basically just going to be making sure that the game keeps moving, since none of y'all will be familiar with the rules ahead of time. I'm basically just there to like prompt you and be like, so This is what you do next.
Cool. I didn't know who from the team was going to be on with us, but yeah, I'm very excited to have y'all back for that. So, what were you saying, Austin?
I was just saying I won't come keep you out. It's okay. I don't need to do that. I'm good.
You can just hop in the chat, and anytime we're like, we don't have anything sufficiently creepy enough, you can just be like, I do. So if people want to follow you, want to connect with your work outside of Deimos Academy, what's the best place for them to find you online? Amanda, let's start with you.
You can follow me on Twitter at Age of Night. That's AGEOFNIGHT.
Awesome. And Austin, how about you?
You can find me on Twitter at SailorScott, it's at Sailor SCT Austin.
Awesome. A couple things before we go, besides going over and backing this, a couple things we'd love to have you check out. If you haven't hit follow on here, please do. We talk to indie RPG designers all the time. At least once or twice a week, we sit down and talk with the creator. We also play games. Tomorrow, we're going to be sitting down with Chris Bissett to play In the Blue Light, which is the most singularly amazing Merkborg dungeon and adventure I have ever read. It pushes the system in completely new ways. It is absolutely phenomenal. I didn't read most of the middle of it because I'm sitting down to play it, and I didn't want anything to be ruined for me, but just the opening and some of the endpoints are tremendous, and I can't wait to probably die underneath or in the ice at some point in time. Tomorrow, that's going to be at 2 p.m. We've got Chris playing with us, and guest GM Sean F. Smith running for us, along with a number of great people, including our good friend Vic, and Nevin, Fork20 over on Twitter, are going to be playing that with us tomorrow. So come back for that. Also, this weekend, we've got a couple other actual plays that I am very excited about. But the other thing I would love to have you look at as soon as I can figure out where it is on my slides is the Together We Jam. We are big fans of both story game and OSR settings. Together We Go is a system that we developed based on the game Down We Go with Marcus Linderum that we funded on GameFound earlier this year, and that we're using to build out a couple other games, as so have other people. It's got an open license called Together We Go, focused on unifying an emergent narrative OSR-inspired experiences. So if you like things like anti-canon and emergent narrative, check it out. But also, it's got a really crisp modular design. So we're hosting a jam next month. If you want to create a game that's just one page, or if you want to create content for Down We Go, Through the Void, which is our space version of it, or DungeonDelvers.tv by Keegan EXE, which is a post-dungeon fantasy where all the dungeons have already been looted, but people now stream their delves down in to kill monsters, and the crowd can interact with them also too, which is a full hack of Down We Go also. Yeah, it's so good. But we're hosting a jam for that all next month, so we have at least 3 or 4 people who are creating new standalone games. We have people who are creating expanded content for all of those settings and systems. Any or all of those things are accepted, permissible, and desired, so you can go check that art over on itch under the Together We Jam moniker. And if you can, please check out 1300s at ttrpg.link/1300s KS. All those things and more. But thank you both so much for being here with us today. Thank you so much for working on this game. I'm super excited to be able to play. And until next time, this has been Prestige Class with Austin and Amanda, and class is dismissed. Bye, everybody.
Yeah.